Alright, here we go. We have 5 American Dad Christmas episodes for you. Let's dive into the first one. For Whom the Sleigh Bell Tolls, an American Dad holiday classic that throws family bonding right out the window and brings in Santa Claus revenge horror? Yep, you heard that right. This one's a wild ride. We kick things off with Stan being Stan. He's got a pretty hard stance on who's part of the family. Jeff Fisher. Not in Stan's book, even though he's literally Haley's husband.
And you need to accept that.
Haley, the only thing I have to accept is that socially I can't wear mascara even though it makes my eyes pop like firecrackers.
But Stan's got other plans for Christmas traditions, and instead of something like, oh, a cozy sweater, he gifts Steve an AK-47. Stan's idea of bonding is, apparently, equipping his teenage son with military hardware, because what says holiday spirit like a semi-automatic rifle? Stan and Steve head out for some good old father-son target practice. Stan doesn't bother with safety instructions. Instead, he's like, here Steve, point, aim, and fire. So naturally, Steve gets a little too trigger happy, spots something in the distance that looks like a snowman, and decides, yeah, let's do this. He fires, and bam down goes Santa. Yes, he's just taken out a man in a red suit who's now lying on the ground, very, very dead. And Steve, he's traumatized, left...
Oh my God! A mall Santa! I didn't see him. Is he...
Left staring at the so-called Santa he's accidentally taken out. Stan's immediate reaction? Hide the body. Yep, no time for emotional processing. They just load him up and bury him without a second thought. Stan's logic? Out of sight, out of mind. But things aren't that simple. Francine finds out and is, oddly focused on the missed opportunity to make the cover-up better. Let's just say she's more concerned about the proper way to dispose of evidence than about the fact that her son might have just offed Santa Claus. Next morning, they get a letter. We know what you did. The whole family starts to get paranoid, feeling the heat as if someone is watching. Plus, the entire town seems to be missing that usual holiday cheer. It's like someone killed Santa or something. Oh wait, they decide to dig up Santa's grave just to make sure they're safe. But guess what? The body's gone. And then surprise, an elf appears. Turns out this was the real Santa and he's alive, recovering at the North Pole and plotting his revenge on the Smiths. Who knew Santa could hold such a grudge? Meanwhile, Roger is on a little adventure of his own. Frustrated that regular alcohol isn't hitting the spot, he goes on a hunt for the strongest drink he can find. He ends up in the mountains with Bob Todd, a hillbilly moonshiner. After a few swigs of Bob's potent brew, Roger's finally satisfied. If nothing else, Rogers found his Christmas miracle in the form of backwoods moonshine. Realizing they need to hide from Santa's wrath, the Smiths hightail it to Bob Todd's cabin, preparing for what can only be described as a very unconventional Christmas Eve. The place turns out to be an armory, so they start gearing up with all sorts of weapons, ready for whatever comes their way. And then comes the showdown. Santa's not messing around. He's brought an entire army of weaponized elves, flying reindeer, and even a giant snowman that looks like it walked out of Lord of the Rings. The Smiths, they're holding nothing back, fending off waves of attackers. In a surprising twist, Santa tries to get Jeff to join his side, but Jeff, who's been treated like the family punching bag up to this point, decides he's not going to let them down. He risks it all to save Stan, pulling him to safety. Finally, Stan sees Jeff in a new light, actually accepting him as part of the family. The battle rages until the clock hits Christmas morning. Santa, defeated for now, pulls his troops back, but leaves them with a chilling message. He'll be back next year. Exhausted but victorious, the Smiths breathe a sigh of relief, realizing they've started a Christmas tradition no one saw coming. In the end, Stan finally accepts Jeff as a member of the family, bringing a little warmth to an otherwise chaotic holiday. But one thing's for sure, Christmas with the Smiths will never be the same again. Next up is Minstrel Krampus. We start with Steve. He has turned into a total brat.
You want the worst? Well, you gon' see the worst.
This holiday season, and Stan's had enough. To set him straight, Stan takes Steve to visit Grandpa Jack, hoping he can scare some sense into him. Jack doesn't disappoint. He tells Steve a chilling tale about Krampus, the mystical Christmas demon who punishes naughty children. But Steve, yeah, he's not buying it.
Okay, I'm bored. Let's go.
Jack even claims he trapped Krampus years ago, keeping him locked away in a copper pot in his basement. Steve just rolls his eyes and keeps being a brat. Things escalate when Steve starts sneaking around and opening his presents early. Stan tries to put the gifts somewhere Steve won't find them, the basement. And guess what? Down there, Stan hears a mysterious voice. It's Krampus, and he's got one request: set him free. Krampus promises to handle Steve's misbehavior, and Stan, fed up with his son, agrees. But there's a twist: Krampus doesn't just discipline Steve, he kidnaps him and demands revenge on Grandpa Jack. Stan runs to Jack, thinking they can sort things out, but Jack's reaction? Total panic. He doesn't want anything to do with Krampus and bolts, leaving Stan to clean up the mess. Meanwhile, Steve wakes up in Krampus's Bavarian castle, where things are interesting. Krampus disciplines him the old-fashioned way. Yes, spanking is involved. I'd say Steve deserves it though, so the household objects, enchanted and alive, try to explain that Krampus isn't evil. He's just a strict disciplinarian who punishes kids because he actually cares about their well-being. Slowly, Steve starts to see the truth. Turns out, Krampus's grudge against Jack goes way back. Years ago, Krampus tried to discipline Jack, but Jack tricked him and captured him while he was distracted by a plate of strudel. Stan turns to Roger for advice, and Roger suggests seeking help from Santa Claus. But here's the problem: Stan has a rocky history with Santa, if you could tell from the previous episodes, so he's not exactly eager to reconnect. Still, desperate times call for desperate measures, so they head to the North Pole, where Santa captures them. And let me tell you, Santa is not jolly. He beats Stan mercilessly for their past run-ins, but eventually agrees to help on one condition: they have to kill Krampus.
Deal. Come on, Roger.
Just a little longer. I'm almost there.
Stan's conflicted, but Santa sweetens the deal by promising to take him off the naughty list. With no other options, Stan and Santa head to Bavaria, preparing for battle. Meanwhile, Haley has her own subplot. She's desperate for Christmas shopping money and turns to Roger for a loan. Roger, of course, refuses and suggests she get a job instead. Haley ends up working at the airport, where she runs into Grandpa Jack, who's trying to flee. She convinces him to face his past and save Steve. Back at Krampus's castle, things come to a head. Santa and Stan storm in, destroying Krampus's magical household allies. Steve tries to defend Krampus, explaining that he's not a villain, but Santa isn't having it. He shoots Krampus and prepares to kill Stan and Steve, revealing himself as the real bad guy. Turns out Santa's just in it for the toys, a partner in the global toy business, and Krampus was bad for business. In the chaos, Jack arrives and saves Stan, taking a bullet meant for him. With Krampus and Jack dying side by side, their blood mixes, leading to a surprising twist. Jack becomes the new Krampus. Now he's destined to carry on Krampus's legacy, punishing naughty children for generations to come. This seems right up Jack's alley to me. As the dust settles, Santa retreats, badly injured, and the Smiths are left to reflect on the chaos of yet another insane Christmas. And for our third episode, this one does Christmas differently, with the most adequate Christmas ever. The story opens with the Smith family gearing up for Christmas, but Stan, ever the perfectionist, is unimpressed with their efforts. Decorations, Christmas tree, and even the holiday spirit fall short of his grand vision. Determined to make this the best Christmas ever, Stan drags the family into the wilderness to find a truly magnificent Christmas tree. As his family protests against the over-the-top mission, Stan continues alone, eventually finding what he deems the perfect tree. But fate has other plans. As he cuts it down, the tree collapses on him.
Perfect amount of blood filling lungs. Wait, no, it's too much.
Crushing him to death. This marks the start of an otherworldly journey for Stan as he wakes up in Limbo, a celestial waiting area for souls. In Limbo, an ice cream man greets Stan and explains the process. He's now in line to be judged and sent either to heaven or hell, but Stan refuses to accept his fate, insisting it isn't his time yet. The ice cream man begrudgingly agrees to take him to a courthouse where Stan can argue for a second chance at life.
Ooh, I misspoke. Looks like you got Michelle.
Fortunately for Stan, his court-appointed lawyer is Michelle, an angel in training with a shaky reputation and unresolved issues with her father, who happens to be the presiding judge. To make matters worse, the prosecution is handled by the seasoned, adorable, and ruthlessly efficient angel Scott LaRose. Scott presents damning evidence of Stan's selfishness, arrogance, and recklessness, including the time he brought a pregnant Francine to Africa, where Haley was born under the care of a baboon.
Hey, Francine, you make coffee?
Michelle's attempts to defend Stan are weak at best, showing clips of his rare selfless acts, such as donating a kidney to a homeless man, which Scott swiftly debunks as a dream sequence. The court denies Stan's appeal for resurrection, ruling that he deserves neither a second chance nor leniency. Making matters worse, Michelle informs Stan that his family, stranded in the forest without car keys, is on the brink of freezing to death due to his thoughtlessness. Stan, desperate to save them, pulls his earthly firearm, but it has no effect in Limbo. Thinking fast, he steals a heaven gun, which is powerful enough to harm celestial beings,
Kill anybody!
Why do we have those again?
and takes Michelle hostage, forcing her to guide him to God. Stan and Michelle escape Limbo by stealing a celestial chariot, pursued by archangels who are determined to stop them. Their journey is fraught with danger, but Michelle gradually comes to sympathize with Stan's desperation and begins to see him as more than a lost cause. The pair reach heaven, where Michelle attempts to disguise Stan as a visitor, but his inability to maintain the act exposes him. St. Peter grows suspicious, but Michelle surprises everyone by knocking him out to help Stan sneak into God's mansion. Inside, a massive birthday party for Jesus is underway, filled with ethereal guests and divine celebrations. Stan confronts God in his private study, begging for his family's safety. God, unimpressed with Stan's arrogance, challenges him to justify his request. As a final act of desperation, Stan turns the heaven gun on him, offering his life in exchange for his family's survival. Moved by Stan's humility and selflessness, God agrees to resurrect him. Before Stan leaves, he asks for Michelle to earn her wings as thanks for her help. God grants the request, shooting Stan with the heaven
Don't you ever pull a gun on me again!
gun to send him back to Earth. Stan awakens back at the beginning of the episode, his body unharmed. With the lessons from Limbo fresh in his mind, he now sees his family's modest Christmas decorations in a new light, appreciating their effort and love. He praises their work, declaring the holiday perfect just as it is. The family shares a heartfelt hug, and in the background, Michelle, now a full-fledged angel, watches over them from the sky. The most adequate Christmas ever is a poignant and hilarious tale of redemption, family, and the true meaning of Christmas. It blends the chaotic humor of American Dad with an underlying message about humility and appreciating what you have. Dad. Christmas Specials cranks up the chaos and Rapture's delight takes things to a whole new level, like apocalyptic levels, because this one's all about the end of the world, religious satire, and Stan trying to win Francine's love amidst total chaos. It all starts out simple enough. Stan and Francine head to church on Christmas morning. Stan's hoping for the perfect day, but his mood sours when they are late to get a good parking spot. Classic Stan controlling and oblivious to bigger problems brewing just under the surface. As Francine and Stan continue their back and forth, boom, the rapture hits. Yep. Angels descend from heaven, believers are whisked away, and those left behind are left to deal with the chaos of the apocalypse. Stan, of course, is furious he didn't make the cut for heaven. Turns out his behavior on Earth hasn't exactly been saintly.
Deal? All right, somebody call Mel Gibson and apologize. And then call Tim Robbins and tell him I banged Susan Sarandon. He'll know what it means.
Francine? She's also left behind, but the only people left are her, Roger, Stan, and the priest. Stan storms off, blaming Francine for getting left behind, leaving her alone during the literal end of days. Cut to 7 years later. Earth has descended into a Mad Max-style wasteland. Demons roam the streets, humanity's in shambles, and Francine has moved on with the Jesus Christ himself. That's right, Francine is now in a relationship with the actual Messiah. Stan, still bitter and alone, is shocked to find her happy without him. Stan tries to win Francine back, but there's a slight complication. Jesus has a mission to defeat the Antichrist and save what's left of humanity. Reluctantly, Jesus agrees to let Stan join his holy quest. The
Ow! My other cheek!
two form an unlikely team, with Jesus bringing divine powers and Stan bringing his stubborn determination. The journey takes them to the Antichrist stronghold. Along the way, we get some of the episode's best comedic moments. Stan struggling to keep up with Jesus' miracles, Jesus questioning Stan's morals, and a few jabs at apocalyptic tropes.
Condemn them, Mother! For they know exactly what they do!
When they finally reach the Antichrist, it's clear he's no ordinary villain. Showdown is epic. Jesus and the Antichrist go head to head, while Stan tries to prove his worth to Francine by joining the fight. In true American Dad style, the battle is both ridiculous and action-packed. In a rare moment of selflessness, Stan puts himself in danger to save Francine.
A bullet for me, for the same reason I came here. For her.
Showing that maybe, just maybe, he's capable of putting someone else first. His sacrifice gives Jesus the upper hand, and the Antichrist is ultimately defeated. With the Antichrist vanquished, the world is saved. Sort of. Francine forgives Stan, and they reconcile, but there's a catch. Stan and Francine aren't headed to heaven anytime soon. They're stuck on Earth to rebuild.
How do I look?
Definitely not like a whore, baby. Definitely not like a whore.
Oh, Stan.
With the 5th episode of The American Dad. Christmas never fails to escalate into chaos, and The Best Christmas Story Never Told takes us on a wild ride through time, political history, and the rise and fall of disco. Stan's obsession with protecting Christmas spirals out of control as he attempts to rewrite history, resulting in some unintended consequences. Let's dive in. It's Christmas in Langley Falls, and Stan is thrilled to celebrate his favorite holiday, but his joy quickly evaporates when he learns the town is embracing secularism. The annual Christmas tree has been banned for being too religious. The mall clerks can't say Merry Christmas, and even the town's infamous Christmas Rapist is rebranded as the Holiday Rapist.
You mean the Christmas rapist? The guy who strikes every year on Christmas!
Stan is furious and blames liberalism, which he traces all the way back to Jane Fonda's activism during the Vietnam War. In Stan's mind, her trip to North Vietnam reignited the hippie movement, laying the foundation for modern liberal values. Fed up, Stan destroys the family's Christmas tree and presents in a fit of rage, leaving Francine furious and banishing him to the couch. That night, Stan is visited by Michelle, the ghost of Christmas past. Once a tooth fairy, she's now tasked with fixing Stan's holiday meltdown. Michelle takes Stan back to 1970 to show him the roots of Christmas's downfall. However, Stan, true to form, ignores her warnings and goes rogue. Instead of observing history, he hatches a plan to assassinate Jane Fonda and erase modern liberalism from existence.
There's only one way to save Christmas. Kill Jane Fonda.
Stan tracks Jane Fonda to the set of Clute, but soon realizes she's not the mastermind behind liberalism. Donald Sutherland is. Sutherland's influence, particularly on Fonda's political awakening, becomes Stan's new target. At a Hollywood party, Stan confronts Sutherland and inadvertently meets Martin Scorsese. In a bizarre twist, Stan convinces Scorsese to give up drugs.
I'm never gonna win an Oscar hopped up on the dope.
You know what, man? You're right.
I'm proud of you.
Accidentally changing cinematic history forever. Michelle and Francine eventually drag Stan back to the present, but everything has changed. The streets are empty, and Soviet tanks patrol Langley Falls. In this new timeline, the Soviet Union conquered the US. What went wrong? Without Scorsese's drug-fueled genius, Taxi Driver was never made. This meant John Hinckley Jr. never became obsessed with Jodie Foster, and never attempted to assassinate Ronald Reagan. Without the assassination attempt, Reagan's approval ratings never soared, causing him to lose the 1984 election to Walter Mondale, who surrendered the US to the Soviets 47 days into his presidency. Determined to undo his mistake, Stan, Francine, and Michelle return to 1970. Stan decides to make the Taxi Driver himself, enlisting Robert De Niro. However, Stan's controlling nature drives De Niro away, so he casts John Wayne instead. The resulting version of the Taxi Driver is a bizarre mix of Stan's militaristic values and Wayne's cowboy persona. The trio tracks John Hinckley Jr. to a movie theater where they screen Stan's version of Taxi Driver. After the film ends, they ask Hinckley about his thoughts. He dismisses the film, finding no interest in Jodie Foster because, in his words, she
Do something really special to impress a girl like that.
That's disgusting. She's 12.
Yeah, a hard 12.
The timeline remains unchanged. Michelle reveals that the only way to restore the original timeline is for Stan to shoot Ronald Reagan himself, recreating the historical near assassination. Stan is horrified. Reagan is his hero, but Francine reminds him that without Reagan's presidency, Christmas and their family's future are at stake. Stan reluctantly agrees, and Michelle transports him to March 30th, 1981, the day of Reagan's attempted assassination. With Francine's encouragement, Stan fires the shot. Just as the bullet hits Reagan, the trio is transported back to 2006. History is restored, and Stan wakes up on Christmas morning in his bed.
No tanks! No Russian troops! Hey, boy, what day is this?
Why, it's Christmas, sir.
Relieved, Stan spends Christmas morning fixing the damage he caused. The family enjoys a perfect holiday, complete with presents and a Christmas tree. Michelle reappears to thank Stan for saving her job, gifting him a new gun. When Stan questions how she purchased it without a waiting period, Michelle casually explains that he only shot Reagan, not James Brady. As a result, gun control laws were never tightened. Stan celebrates this as yet another win.
This is the best Christmas ever.
The best Christmas story never told is a chaotic, hilarious ride through history that only American Dad could pull off. From Stan's misguided hero worship of Reagan to Roger's accidental disco empire, the episode perfectly blends absurd humor with heartfelt holiday moments. In the end, it's a reminder that sometimes even Stan can learn to appreciate the true spirit of Christmas. After a few gunshots, of course. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more American Dad. Thanks and see you next time.
Bye. Have a beautiful time.